What makes a WWE rivalry unforgettable? Is it the championships, the brutal matches, the shocking betrayals? Or is it something deeper? Two superstars who bring out the absolute best and worst in each other. WWE has given us rivalries that defined generations, created legends, shattered friendships, and produced moments that fans still talk about decades later. Some rivalries were built on hatred, others were built on respect. Some lasted for years, while others burned so brightly that a few months were enough to make history. But when you put the greatest WWE rivalries of all time against each other, which one deserves the #1 spot? Welcome to Ring Insights, where we break down the stories, legends, rivalries, and unforgettable moments that made WWE history. Today, we are ranking the greatest WWE rivalries of all time. And trust me, some of these rivalries are so legendary that choosing between them is almost impossible. At number 10, we have The Rock versus Triple H. During the late 1990s and early 2000s, WWE was filled with young superstars fighting to become the face of the company. Two of the most important names in that generation were The Rock and Triple H. Their rivalry represented the battle between two future icons. The Rock had the charisma, the catchphrases, and an incredible connection with the crowd. Triple H had the attitude, the aggression, and the mindset of someone determined to become the best. Their rivalry produced memorable encounters and helped establish both men as main event stars. What made it special was that neither man needed the other to become successful, but together they created something that elevated both careers. At number 9, we have Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels. This rivalry was about more than wrestling. Bret Hart represented technical excellence, discipline, and tradition. Shawn Michaels represented athleticism, confidence, and an unpredictable attitude. Their personalities were completely different, and that difference created one of the most intense rivalries of the 1990s. Their matches were spectacular, but the real story was the tension between them outside the ring. Their rivalry eventually reached its breaking point at Survivor Series 1997, in one of the most controversial moments in WWE history. The Montreal Screwjob changed WWE forever. Whether you see it as betrayal, business, or one of the most complicated moments in wrestling history, there is no denying that Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels remains one of WWE's most unforgettable rivalries. At number 8, we have The Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels. This rivalry began with one simple question: who was better? At WrestleMania 25, two of the greatest performers in WWE history collided in a match that many fans consider one of the greatest WrestleMania matches ever. The Undertaker had an undefeated WrestleMania streak that seemed almost impossible to defeat. Shawn Michaels believed he could be the man to end it. Their match was more than a wrestling contest. It was a battle between two completely different characters, two different philosophies, and two legendary careers. The storytelling was incredible. Near falls came one after another. Both men pushed themselves beyond their limits, and for nearly 30 minutes, fans had no idea who would survive. 1 year later, they did it again. The second match carried even higher stakes because Shawn Michaels put his career on the line. The Undertaker won again. Shawn Michaels was gone. Two matches transformed an already legendary rivalry into wrestling history. At number 7, we have John Cena versus Edge. For years, John Cena was becoming the face of WWE, but one man repeatedly stood in his way: Edge. The rated R superstar became one of Cena's greatest enemies because he represented everything Cena's character was supposed to fight against. Cena represented hard work and determination. Edge represented manipulation, opportunism, and doing whatever it took to win. Their rivalry produced championship battles, shocking moments, and some of the biggest matches of the ruthless aggression era. Whether they were fighting over the WWE Championship or battling inside brutal stipulation matches, Cena and Edge consistently delivered. Their rivalry helped define WWE during one of the company's most important eras. At number 6, we have Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Triple H. This rivalry was built on chaos. Stone Cold Steve Austin was already one of the biggest stars in WWE, while Triple H was rapidly becoming one of the most dangerous heels in the company. Their rivalry became especially intense when Triple H formed alliances designed to destroy Austin. But Austin refused to back down. What made this rivalry special was the sheer intensity between the two men. Every confrontation felt dangerous, every match felt personal. They were not simply fighting for championships, they were fighting for control. Their rivalry helped define the brutal atmosphere of WWE's Attitude Era and established Triple H as one of the company's ultimate villains. At number 5, we have The Rock versus Hulk Hogan. On paper, this match was almost impossible to create. The Rock was the biggest star of the new generation. Hulk Hogan was the immortal icon of an older generation. When they finally met at WrestleMania 18, the match became something much bigger than anyone expected. The crowd turned the entire story upside down. Hogan was supposed to be the villain. The Rock was supposed to be the hero. But the audience decided otherwise. The atmosphere inside the arena became electric. The Rock and Hogan created a moment that showed just how powerful wrestling nostalgia could be. The match itself became secondary to the emotional reaction. It was a passing of the torch, whether officially or unofficially, from one generation to another. At number 4, we have The Undertaker versus Kane. This rivalry was different from the others because it was built around family. Kane was introduced as The Undertaker's long-lost half-brother, and from that moment, WWE created one of its most iconic stories. The Undertaker had spent years building an almost supernatural reputation. Then Kane arrived. He was bigger, more destructive, and seemingly impossible to stop. The two brothers battled each other through some of WWE's most memorable storylines. But what made their rivalry last was the relationship between them. Sometimes they were enemies, sometimes they were allies, and sometimes they were both. The Undertaker and Kane became two of the most recognizable characters in WWE history, and their connection helped define an entire era. At number 3, we have The Rock versus Stone Cold Steve Austin. This rivalry was the heart of the Attitude Era. Two completely different personalities, two massive egos, two superstars who refused to stay in each other's shadow. Stone Cold Steve Austin was the rebellious anti-hero. The Rock was the charismatic superstar who could insult an entire arena with a smile. Whenever these two men stood across from each other, the audience knew something special was about to happen. Their WrestleMania encounters became legendary. At WrestleMania 15, Austin defeated The Rock to win the WWE Championship. At WrestleMania 17, The Rock and Austin delivered another unforgettable battle, and at WrestleMania 19, they met one final time. Their rivalry was not simply about championships, it was about who represented WWE. And for a period of time, they were the two biggest stars in the entire wrestling world. At number 2, we have Bret Hart versus Stone Cold Steve Austin. This rivalry was special because it changed both men. Bret Hart was already a respected WWE legend. Stone Cold Steve Austin was becoming a superstar. Their rivalry transformed Austin from a rebellious character into one of the most important figures in wrestling history. The turning point came at WrestleMania 13. The submission match between Austin and Bret remains one of the greatest examples of storytelling in WWE history. Austin was bleeding. He refused to quit. Bret Hart locked in the sharpshooter. Austin could barely move, but he still refused to surrender. The image of Austin passing out instead of submitting became iconic. And the crowd reaction told the entire story. Bret Hart became the villain. Stone Cold Steve Austin became the hero. In one match, WWE created a superstar who would soon become the face of the company. That is what a great rivalry is supposed to do. It does not simply create great matches. It changes careers, but there can only be one number one. And the greatest WWE rivalry of all time is Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant, before Stone Cold, before The Rock, before The Undertaker. Before WrestleMania became the biggest event in wrestling, there was Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant. The rivalry reached its legendary peak at WrestleMania 3. Hogan was the unstoppable superhero. Andre was the giant who seemed impossible to defeat. For years, Andre had been one of the most respected and feared wrestlers in the world. Then came the moment that shocked the wrestling world. Andre turned against Hogan. The two legends finally met in front of one of the largest crowds WWE had ever assembled, and then Hogan did the impossible. He lifted Andre the Giant. The body slam became one of the most famous moments in WWE history. It was not just a wrestling move, it became a symbol of strength, a symbol of WWE's ability to create larger-than-life moments, and a symbol of what professional wrestling could become. That rivalry helped establish WrestleMania as a global phenomenon and played a major role in turning WWE into the entertainment empire it would eventually become. And that is why Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant takes the number one spot. But here is the real beauty of WWE. There is no single correct list. For one fan, Stone Cold versus The Rock might be number one. For another, Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels might be the greatest rivalry ever. Someone else might choose Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels, and that is what makes wrestling special. The greatest rivalries are not just about wins and losses, they are about emotion. They are about characters. They are about moments that make you cheer, boo, scream, or even sit in silence. They create memories that stay with fans long after the final bell rings. From Hogan and Andre to Austin and The Rock, from Bret and Shawn to Undertaker and Kane, these rivalries helped shape WWE into what it is today. And perhaps the next greatest rivalry is already being written right now. Because in WWE, history never really ends. It simply waits for the next chapter. If you enjoyed this countdown, make sure you stay connected with Ring Insights for more WWE stories, legendary rivalries, championship histories, career breakdowns, hidden facts, and unforgettable moments from professional wrestling history. Because the greatest stories in WWE are not just remembered, they are relived.